when we give tours to a lot of customers, this is the one that they learn the most from. This is the block that's very educational and things that they've never really seen before. So this is a really fun block. This block here we planted Roundup Ready soybeans, so it does not have the dicamba, nor does it have the 2,4-D trait. Because what we want to do is we want to show the symptomology of dicamba on soybeans. We also want to show the symptomology of 2,4-D on soybeans and compare and contrast. The symptomology of 2,4-D versus dicamba, a lot of times, most of the times they look different. You're going to see some differences here when we point them out today, but sometimes a very, very low rated dicamba can look like 2,4-D. So if you're going to be out in the field this coming year or the following year, you'll probably get the opportunity to have to know the difference. So that's why this is such an educational plot. So what we did is we did 4 different applications. We did, it's called the tank contamination trial. So what we're doing is we're simulating the lack of cleaning out a tank going to another crop. So what we did is, for instance, we have 6 rows and we sprayed the middle 4. And for instance, this one is a 5% dilution of a solution. So let me explain what that is. Let's assume we got a 1,000-gallon sprayer and we used 12.8 ounces of Ingenia. That's the dicamba we used. And we spray the Ingenia on the field. We're spraying soybeans. When we got 50 gallons of solution left in the tank, then we added 950 gallons of clean water, but added no more herbicide. So you just got that 50 gallons of solution diluted with 950 of water, and we spray that. And that's what we're simulating here. So this is a 5% dilution of a solution of dicamba. So you pull the soybeans, and you can see, you notice the height difference right away versus untreated. But what you're noticing here is we're getting a lot of the clubbing. You're getting some cupping showing up, which people are very familiar with cupping on soybeans. So you got that cupping showing up in some of these leaves. But these soybeans just really haven't grown since we applied it. And we applied it exactly 4 weeks ago today. So we had plenty of time to show the symptomology. The interesting thing about dicamba injury, it will not show up for at least 7, but it's usually 10 to 14 days after application. It won't affect the leaves that are sprayed physically, but it affects the new trifoliates that are emerging later. So you can see on these beans, they're still flowering just a little bit, but they haven't grown. You got a lot of clubbing and cupping going on. You just don't have much growth. That symptomology is probably more than you would normally see with an off-targeted dicamba, because this is more of a person sprayed the night before, didn't clean out a sprayer, it was too late. Next person comes in, sprays the next morning, added water to the tank. This is what you would get. So tank contamination can be real. It doesn't happen very often, but it can. What's interesting is we did not spray this row, but you're seeing also some off-target movement of dicamba. I want to point out a couple leaves, because this is a situation where a lot of people will think this is 2,4-D injury. Very low rates of dicamba can look like 2,4-D. These leaves are not cupped. They're actually cupped backwards. They're not cupped forward like you would normally expect with dicamba. You got the rough leaves, kind of the bumps, the alligator look, some elongation on the leaves. But what's unique about this, and I'll hold this and I'll show you, I'll compare it to 2,4-D in a moment, but it's got the blunt tips. It's got those blunt tips. They're kind of yellow. So if you have a leaf that's not cupped but looks elongated, but it's got blunt tips, that's a dicamba symptomology. If you got this kind of a look with a pointed tip, then that's more of a 2,4-D type symptomology. Dicamba usually does look different than 2,4-D. One interesting thing is that 2,4-D will never cup leaves. So low rates, 2,4-D injury will not look like dicamba, but dicamba can look like 2,4-D. So let's go down to the next one and we'll show the difference. This is with Enlist, okay? We did the exact same thing. We used the regular labeled rate. This is a 5% dilution of a solution. What we did here, you got a 1,000-gallon sprayer, 50 gallons of solution left after you're done spraying a field. Add 950 gallons of clean water, but add no more herbicide. This is the symptomology you would see. And this solution is exactly the same concentration we just saw on the dicamba side. Okay, if you look across it, you're not going to see the height difference. And what we're trying to show here is soybeans just naturally have more tolerance to 2,4-D than they do dicamba. We'll cover it later in the plot, but non-enlist soybeans are not a susceptible crop to 2,4-D. That's why we can spray upwind and we don't have to worry about other traded soybeans, is because it has actually 23 times more tolerance to 2,4-D than it does to dicamba. Any soybean, regardless of the traits. Soybeans just naturally more tolerant to 2,4-D. So we're going to come in here and I want to show you some 2,4-D injury. So I got to find some leaves here. Here's a trifoliate. Okay, look at this trifoliate here. It's kind of got that backwards cupping. You can see how it's stretched out and elongated. But see how it retains that point? And a low rate of dicamba, that has backward cupping too. It's got the bumpy leaves, but notice how the tips are more blunt. Kind of hard to see sometimes, but you can see the blunt tip versus the pointed tip. So if you go into a field and see this type, that's more symptomology of 2,4-D. If someone thinks this is 2,4-D, but it's got that blunt yellow tip, that's going to be a low rate of dicamba. So you normally won't see this unless it's real low rates. But it's easy to get these very confused. I work with a lot of retailers, a lot of agronomists, crop scouts, and the first impression with a grower is going to be, that's 2,4-D, but it isn't. That is dicamba. This is 2,4-D. So you can see that difference. Now let's compare the higher 5% dilution of a solution with 1/10 as much. This is a 0.5% dilution of a solution. So again, 1,000-gallon tank, we spray out until there's only 5 gallons of solution left in the tank. We had 995 gallons of water. So you got the diluted in the solution already at 995 gallons of clean water. This is with Ingenia, with dicamba. These beans have kept growing, but you can see that versus what we saw earlier with the 5%. It's a lot of symptomology. In fact, you look at some of these leaves, you're getting a lot of this blunt tipped leaves. They're not cupped like you would normally expect on dicamba, but see how the tips are blunt and more yellow? Okay, that's not 2,4-D, that's dicamba. And then you compare this 0.5% dilution of dicamba with the 0.5% dilution of enlist. Both the 5% dilution and the 0.5% dilution be very difficult to see from the road. In fact, it's very difficult to find any symptomology at all. And all we're trying to do here is show that soybeans have a lot more tolerance to 2,4-D than they do dicamba. So we don't ever want to mess up. We don't ever want to not clean the sprayer appropriately. But if a mistake did happen, you could see the effect on the soybeans and potentially the yield it's more extreme on the dicamba side versus the 2,4-D.